I was tidying up my desk when I got a call from my supervisor, Emily. I had been thinking about leaving without saying anything, but I was called, so I went grudgingly to her office. Then she made a statement that I found unbelievable. Hey, can you take over the $15 million steal? Above all, I had no desire to labor. It was strange that she wanted me to give such a large project to a recently discharged employee. I couldn't stand her victory any longer, even though her father, David, was the executive vice president. Can I see the documents? I asked Emily after coming up with an idea. Emily smiled smugly as she handed me the documents, assuming I had accepted. I looked through them and saw that my suspicion was right. The person in charge was previously labeled as me. The date, though, was from a few months prior to the time I received notice of my termination. What made her bring this up now? It's impossible because they appointed me. I firmly stated, understanding her motives. I apologize. I've been fired. Mark is my name. I was in my mid-50s and working at a company. I've worked for this corporation for over half of my life, starting from the time I graduated. It was a weird feeling, both long and fleeting. I had a rewarding career as a salesperson in the beverage company's sales department. The sales department was divided into the marketing and sales divisions. Nevertheless, as the business grew, I was put in charge of the marketing division, where I currently work. The marketing division was in charge of developing strategies for product sales, in contrast to the sales department, which dealt directly with purchasing and selling. It concentrated on marketing to the market. The marketing department sought to comprehend the behavior of new customers and develop tactics, whilst the sales department worked with current clients. I was originally perplexed by the distinction, but it was really satisfying to sell the plans we looked at and talked about. However, some items didn't sell at all, while others reached unanticipated demographics, even with extensive market research and promotion. The complexity of marketing captivated me. As one of the department's original veterans, I was somewhat older, but I tried to interact with the younger employees. They became more forthcoming with me. I'd like that we could freely share our thoughts in this area. The opinions of young people were highly important, and they quickly obtained information from social media. Trends that appeared to be growing quickly could abruptly stall. It was difficult for me to keep up with this pace at my age, but it was a requirement of the job. Enemies became useful informants once they were on your side. Mark, yelled a young male worker at me. Whom? What is it? Our rival company had a major backlash yesterday. What? Why? I tried to keep up with online news, but I often missed smaller stories. It seems they messed up with their tagline. He showed me the controversial post. This one. Seriously? Oh, I saw this yesterday. This is bad. It's outdated and won't fly these days. A female employee passing by joined the conversation. So it's really bad. Definitely bad. They both nodded in agreement. Close call. We were considering a similar angle, I said. I guess we should change it. Changing the tagline for the project I was working on was a hassle, but it was better than facing a backlash. That's a good idea. It'll backfire these days. This kind of thing gets a lot of backlash. It's better to avoid it. Thanks to everyone, regardless of their seniority, and clearly voicing their opinions, we managed to avoid major mistakes. The marketing department had a great atmosphere. However, this positive work environment was about to change due to a personnel transfer. We have personnel transfers every year, and there was a major reshuffle this time as well. Replacing our calm and always smiling manager, Mike, was a new female boss in her 30s. Emily was somewhat of a celebrity. Rumor had it that she joined the company through her connections with David, the executive VP, and also her father, and was doing whatever she pleased in various departments. In reality, she favored and gave preferential treatment to those who praised her, but those who disagreed or argued with her were forcibly removed. I had been dreading what would happen to this department, which was full of people who spoke their minds, and my worst fears were confirmed. I went to Emily's desk to get approval for a project. This project had been meticulously discussed with the sales team and employees, and we finally put it together. Everyone felt confident about it, and we were ready to move forward with production once we got approval. Emily glanced through the proposal and then said with a dismissive tone, "What's this project? It's terrible." She tossed the papers aside. "What exactly is wrong with it?" I nervously pressed for details. Emily, perhaps seeing it as defiance, glared at me sharply. "What's wrong is wrong. Redo it." "But could you tell me what specifically needs to be redone?" I was confused and asked. Emily responded with cold words. "I said everything. This project is rejected." "Wait, please at least let us discuss the content a bit more." Ignoring my plea, Emily stood up and left. I told everyone about Emily's rejection, and we decided to hold a new planning meeting, confident in the previous project. Everyone gathered in the conference room with gloomy expressions. Amidst this, an overly cheerful voice echoed in the room. "Why the long faces, everyone? I've got a great idea." Her proposal was outrageous, questionable, and seemed like no market research had been done at all. Even a new graduate could come up with something better. We listened in stunned silence as Emily presented. After a while, a young male employee timidly raised his hand. "Excuse me, but how did you set up the persona for this project?" "Ha, persona? Don't interrupt while I'm talking." Emily snapped, then continued. "A persona in marketing terms is a detailed profile of a target customer to give a concrete image of who they are. It's a basic marketing term," she said. It seemed Emily didn't know it. As we listened to her sloppy presentation, everyone exchanged furtive glances. We were all bewildered. When her presentation ended, she asked if there were any questions. I thought for a moment, then raised my hand and clearly stated, "Excuse me, Emily, but we can't proceed with this project." Emily's expression changed. "What do you mean?" "Honestly, this project doesn't hold up as a proposal in marketing. Market research is crucial." Before I could finish, Emily sighed dramatically. "You don't get it." "What don't I get?" I asked. "Your position," Emily said, looking down at me with cold eyes. "What do you mean by that?" Before I could answer, Emily said, "You're fired. Don't come back next month." Normally, managers couldn't fire an employee on their own, but it seemed Emily had some influence with her connections, which I couldn't resist. I was suddenly fired from the company I had worked at for over 30 years. Despite being overwhelmed with confusion and sadness, there was no reversing the decision. After a period of feeling down, I decided I couldn't continue like this, so I started looking for a new job while using up my remaining vacation days. Even though I only had connections at my current workplace, it seemed I wouldn't be left without a job at this age, thanks to the help of acquaintances. However, I was concerned about the colleagues I was leaving behind. Unfortunately, that was my last day. I had to talk with everyone during my last day at work. However, things didn't go as planned. As I was cleaning up my desk, Emily suddenly called me. I thought about quitting without saying a word, but I reluctantly headed to her office since I was summoned. Then she said something unbelievable. "Hey, take over the $15 million deal." I asked what she meant by taking over a deal on my last day, to which she replied, "I've decided to cancel your termination. So, can you start working on this deal right away?" While it might have been good that my termination was canceled, I had already secured a new job. Considering the arrangements with my new employer, I couldn't simply undo everything. More importantly, I didn't want to follow Emily's whims anymore. It was strange to assign such a huge project to an employee who was suddenly fired. Even though her father, David, was an executive VP, I couldn't tolerate any more of her arbitrary actions. I came up with an idea and said, "Can I see the documents?" Mistaking my intentions, Emily handed me the documents with a smug smile. As I flipped through them, my suspicion was confirmed. My name was already listed as the person in charge. However, the date was from several months ago, before I was informed of my termination. Why did she bring up this project at this time? Understanding her intentions, I firmly told Emily, "Since they appointed me, it's impossible. I'm fired." "What?" Emily exclaimed. "You're refusing a $15 million deal?" "Yes. To be precise, I can't take this under your management. I'll handle it at my new job." Emily stood up with a loud bang at my words. It was the first time I had seen her so flustered. "What do you mean by that?" she shouted, pounding the desk and leaning forward. I sighed and began to explain slowly. When I was first informed of my termination, I consulted with a former colleague who had worked in sales with me. He had planned to work with me in the marketing department, but chose to leave the company to pursue sales elsewhere. He was working as a sales manager at another beverage company at the time. We still went out for drinks, and I wanted his advice as someone who had experienced job transitions. After quietly listening to my story, he finished his beer and said, "Want to join us? Really? Is that okay?" I was surprised by the sudden offer, but he said he was close with their HR manager and would discuss it. Thankfully, things progressed smoothly from there. I never imagined I could transition to a new job so easily. I secured a position at another beverage company in the same industry. Moreover, I was assigned to the marketing department. It truly felt like a stroke of luck. During the interview, Jack, the HR manager, asked if I knew about a major project that had recently started. It was a widely discussed project about forming a business partnership with a rival company. Naturally, it involved a substantial amount of money. The partnership between rival companies had attracted considerable attention in the industry, so I had heard about it but didn't know the details. When I mentioned this, Jack tilted his head in confusion. The documents Jack had included my name. I was surprised and said, "There must be some mistake." But now, I understood this project had indeed come to our company. Emily had secretly tried to hijack a project originally assigned to me, and when it became too much for her, she tried to pass it off. It was bad enough she tried to steal it, but if she attempted it, she should have seen it through. I felt anger towards Emily's approach to her work. She must have bullied her way up to manager by intimidating others and taking credit for their work. Realizing the pettiness of Emily's methods, I sighed deeply once more. Emily had been listening and started trembling with anger, shouting, "Of course you can't refuse. You have to take this project. Even if you say that, panic that I wouldn't take the project." Emily turned to the other employees and said, "Hey, are you going to run away? If you leave, these guys will have to take over. Abandoning your colleagues makes you the worst." Having my colleagues, who had helped me so much, used as hostages left me speechless. But then everyone turned their attention to a figure entering the office. There was a man in a well-tailored suit, exuding authority and presence. "That's enough, Emily. It was David, Dad." Emily's eyes widened, and she took a step back. She must have never expected her father, the executive VP, to appear. David. I couldn't hide my surprise either. Seeing David in the office was rare. It might have even been the first time he visited the marketing department. I had informed him today was my last day, but I never expected him to come. "I'm sorry, Mark. It seems my daughter has caused trouble." David looked at me with an apologetic expression. "No, I never expected you to come. I love my daughter, you see. I've turned a blind eye until now, but this time I couldn't ignore it. I don't know how to apologize enough to you." David looked down. "Please raise your head." "Yes, Dad, why are you apologizing to someone like him?" Emily's face was filled with fear and anxiety. "Emily, you mustn't say someone like him. Mark and I have been colleagues in the sales department for a long time." David firmly rebuked Emily. David was my senior in the sales department, and we had a long history together. We rarely met since he became the executive VP, but he still invited me for drinks a few times a year. He had contacted me while I was on vacation, and I had told him about what had happened. "But Dad, I'm his boss. If you think being a boss means you can do anything, you're gravely mistaken." David raised his voice, and Emily shrank back in fear. "Emily, you've gone too far. You're an adult now. Even though you're my daughter, you'll have to face the consequences yourself." "No, Dad, wait. I didn't do anything." Emily clung to her father with a pale face. "I've been listening to your conversation with Mark from outside the room. It's unacceptable to decide someone's fate based on your whims. You're not suited for a leadership position." "That's not true. I did well in my previous department too." Emily tried to defend herself, tears in her eyes. "I hate to say this, but all you've been doing is taking credit for others' work to climb up the ladder. That's not real work. Stop this childish behavior. That's cruel. It's not childish. I was doing my job properly. Ignoring Emily's tearful pleas, David turned his back on his daughter. I will report this matter to Mr. Smith. It's my fault for letting it go this far. Mark, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I hope you excel at your new job. Thank you. I'd love to go out for drinks again sometime. David smiled and left the marketing department, leaving a crying Emily behind. Not long after, I resigned. Emily's fate was decided as well. She was demoted and transferred to a remote sales office. It was a clear case of being sidelined. David voluntarily offered to cut his executive compensation. The marketing team continued to work diligently, expressing their opinions freely in project meetings. They seemed to be satisfied with their new boss, and the tone of their occasional emails to me was cheerful. I hoped they would keep their sincerity and continue to have fulfilling days ahead. Mark. A young male employee called out to me as I was looking at my PC. What's up? Check this out. This post is going viral. What? Which one? This one, right here. He showed me his phone screen. Wow, it's getting a lot of comments. Yes, we've nailed the buzz factor. Reading through the comments, I couldn't help but pump my fist. This photo is great too. I'm really happy. The young employee chuckled at my reaction. What's funny? Well, you always talk to us so casually that I forget there's a big age gap between us. I felt a bit of a generation gap just now. What? When? What was it? As I panicked, he coldly responded, "It's a secret." Why? Tell me. Nope. Smiling mischievously, he returned to his desk. Come on, seriously. I didn't understand what caused the generation gap, so I tilted my head and returned my gaze to the computer. A few months had passed since I started my new job. Even though it was the same industry and the same marketing department, the internal systems and methods were, of course, different. Learning new things at this age was challenging, but both young and veteran employees had started talking to me casually lately. Many people had strong opinions, and being able to work while challenging each other was immensely gratifying. The $15 million project was still ongoing. Ultimately, the project at my old company was taken over by a trusted colleague, which was a relief. Meeting up with him during meetings was always something to look forward to. My career change reaffirmed that there is still much to learn in marketing. Despite my age, I'm still a newcomer here, and I want to absorb as much as I can. Mark, the meeting is starting. At my colleague's call, I stood up energetically. Coming. I headed to the meeting room with a spring in my step. I wondered what kind of ideas would come up today. I opened the door to the meeting room with anticipation.